It wouldn't be Spa without mixed weather, would it? We've had rain, the sun is shining, at least at certain parts of the circuit, and the drivers and the teams face a real quandary over what to do for tyres as we get set for the second GT4 European Series race of the weekend. Welcome to one of the best circuits in the world, and welcome to a race that has an awful lot to offer, with a really jumbled grid after dramas yesterday, after one or two penalties have been applied and the cars have formed up ready for 1 hour of racing, mandatory pit stops, driver changes for most cars but not all, and the race has been declared wet. David Addison and Ryan Marine trackside, Gemma Scott down on the grid, and it's a very busy grid with engineers trying to work out whether or not it is going to be slicks or it is going to be wet. And I suspect, Ryan, it's going to be slicks because it's just not that wet all the way around, is it?
Well, we see the cars on the grid at the moment, and it seems like everyone is making that switch. They rolled the cars out on the groove tires, on the wet tires, making the switch now to the slicks, it appears, by and large. So, and we don't know what to expect, and it could change between now and then. We shall see.
Absolutely right. It is going to be certainly slippery out there for the first few laps of the race, that is for sure. Pole position for this race is the car of Tom Canning and Ruben del SARTE. Ruben with Gemma Scott.
Ruben, pole position, a fantastic result for you guys. You were, I think, surprised yourselves to be this far up.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great way to start a race. Great job from Tom. I mean, he did an amazing lap during the qualifying. We knew we had a strong pace, we had a good setup. Even though we struggled a bit yesterday during the race, we made a few changes in order to anticipate and get a good pace for this race.
I assume you're starting on slicks. The weather's really up and down, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite tricky conditions. Obviously, first pole for us doesn't make it easy to get rain and then dry, but I mean, the track's drying really quick up with this weather, so we'll see.
Have a great race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, second generation racer Ruben del SARTE. His father, Rafael Real del SARTE, raced in single-seaters in the UK in the late 1980s, got as far as Formula 3, and Ruben came out of the Ginetta Junior Championship in the UK like this man, Charlie Fagg, and his co-driver Bailey Voisin. I think slicks is going to be the way to go. Look at the tarmac there, you can see all of those grooves in that section of the circuit. That's all to try and help with the drainage, that patterned road, if you like. And that United Autosports McLaren of Bailey Voisin and Charlie Fagg won yesterday's race. And Ryan, yesterday it was just mighty.
It was, and Charlie was the star because he put in an excellent second stint. He'll be starting today for race number 2. Took over more or less in the lead, was able to make that switch coming around. They pitted a little bit earlier than the competition. Charlie behind the wheel was able to make the pass for the lead into LECLERC and held on the rest of the way despite a restart. But Bailey Voisin, I thought, was equally impressive for different reasons. He was under attack for much of the race. It was his first time starting on pole, and he looked very, very comfortable, fending off numerous challenges from behind.
The first time he'd raced at Spa, which again
right.
was another reason to get excited about him. So we'll see how he goes today. And in fact, Bailey Voisin is down on the grid with Gemma. He can reflect on that great win yesterday and look forward to race 2.
Bailey, after a win yesterday, riding on a high and starting on the front row today.
Yeah, brilliant lap by Charlie in the second qualifying session to put us on the front row. It rained a few minutes ago, so he might sort of change strategy a little bit. It will definitely, the tyres, like tyre choice, will come into play. But it looks like it's dried up, or it's starting to dry up a bit. So yeah, maybe I think the sharp end of the field is definitely on the slicks. The majority are anyway. So that will make it a bit more interesting. So Charlie's in the car for the first half, and then about halfway through I'll hop in and hopefully come home in a good place. But we'll see. I mean, obviously it's a high-end quality field. A lot can happen, and especially with the weather changing so constantly, it's going to be difficult. But
when that
we'll do our
rain falls,
best.
it really falls, doesn't it?
Sorry?
When that rain falls, it seems to really fall.
Yeah, it seems to really fall. Like, it rained only for a short period of time, but the track got quite wet. But it stopped raining about 10 minutes ago, so it does dry up quite quickly here. So we'll see what happens. But I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And behind on the grid, you see number 22 Porsche, Joel Sturm and Nikolai Müller-Madsen's car that qualified 4th with a Nikolai Müller-Madsen time, but we never really saw the best out of that car yesterday. It ran well to begin with, and then it seemed to be some electrical drama that stopped it.
It did. There was a moment where it lost speed entirely. This was with Sturm behind the wheel, and then was able to get back to speed, but then ultimately came to a stop, and we saw them trying to recycle the electronics on that car, couldn't get it going. I think that's the biggest what-if from yesterday. That car was exceptionally fast. We never got to see what Nikolai Müller-Madsen could do. He's incredibly rapid behind the wheel. And I think this opening stint is going to be interesting, starting from the outside of the second row, what kind of positions he can make up, and then turn it over to his co-driver, who had a great qualifying effort for race 1 yesterday. That should be a pairing to keep an eye on, and extra motivated given the frustrations from yesterday.
The Alpines looked quick yesterday, and there, number 36 is the Arcadia Racing entry that Antoine Leclerc will start, and he shares that car with Stéphane Guérin, and slicks is the way to go. It stopped raining, and although it isn't exactly sunny over here, it is giving the impression that it's going to dry out reasonably quickly, assuming that we don't have another big shower before the very end, and this is Spa, so it could happen.
I'm a Spa neophyte, and I think what I've learned is you shouldn't assume anything as far as the weather goes around this place. So we'll just have to adjust on the fly, just like these teams. But again, it is worth noting that it is declared a wet race based on the fact that we did have quite a bit of rain prior to this race. It affected the TCR race immediately preceding this one, and I think all of these teams were watching anxiously how that race unfolded to try and make the best strategy call they could as far as tires were concerned for this race.
It's not so much the track, because that is an issue in itself and the state of it, but it's the curbs, isn't it? Get onto a wet, painted curb. Suddenly, what you thought was traction becomes a whole different world of pain.
Yeah, any driver will tell you that a slick set of painted asphalt has just no grip whatsoever, might as well be driving on ice. And you can see what has been done to the track surface here to continue with the drainage and to help with some of the grip in the event of rain, which is almost a certainty around here. But with that said, it doesn't help you at all when you get up on the painted stuff, so you have to adjust your line accordingly. However, the painted stuff in the dry, you want to get out there to go faster. That's where the speed is found, and as this circuit starts to dry out, assuming it does, then you do need to slowly, cautiously venture out a little bit and see what kind of grip is available to you there. But there are real rewards for those who are brave enough to try it early, but the risk is real as well.
Absolutely so. Now the grid is formed. I'm just looking to the back of it because it has lined up slightly differently from what was published. And the rain is falling again now as well. So just as the teams get set to go, safety car will lead them around. It is going to be the rolling start rather than a safety car start, so it's the normal start procedure, at least as far as we are aware for now. But yeah, just as they've committed, just as the teams go to the pit lane, then it starts to rain once more. This is going to make it very, very tricky indeed, because by the end of this lap, the circuit could be awash or it could be bone dry again.
It puts the teams, the drivers, in a very difficult situation. The drivers on this lap will be basically doing reconnaissance, figuring out what kind of grip will be there when the green comes out. Do they need to make an early call to the pit lane for a change of tires to the wets? Did anybody gamble and stick with the wets maybe a little bit further back in the hopes that perhaps this exact eventuality would take place? We'll soon find out.
Well, pole position is Tom Canning, Charlie Fagg with him at the front of the grid, ahead of Timothy Bure and Nikolai Moller-Madsen. It's Jim Pla and Greg Gilbert on the third row, ahead of Antoine Leclerc and Dean MacDonald on row 4. Hugo Chevalier shares row 5 with Vincent Beltoise. The 6th row, Stéphane Lemeret, man to watch, and Maxime Soulet, his fellow countryman, the two Belgians, then 11th and 12th on the grid. 13th and 14th, Ralph Kellen is another hugely experienced driver, lining up alongside Timon Nabouz. Then you've got Xavier Lloveras and Romain Iannetta in his Team Ford Motorsport Audi number 77. The 9th row, Max Busnelli and then Jody Vullo. Row 10 of the grid is Konstantin Lachenau, won at Zandvoort but had a suspension drama yesterday. The car sat down low and was a retirement. Rafael Villanueva lining up alongside. On the 11th row, Akhil Rabindra and Pierre Courroy. So that's Aston Martin and Audi, respectively. The 12th row of the grid, Anthony Hodson's Toyota, Paul Teiskens lining up alongside with the Streetars. Aston. The 13th row should be Yangish Gedich and Andrea Benazet in another of the Toyota GR Supras. Row 14, Joel Camafias, and going solo today, Benjamin Ricci. He had a partner yesterday, but he's a soloist today. Max Trasoldi and Greg Faisal, another solo driver, come next, ahead of Bob Herber and then Eric Hare. They share the 16th row of the grid. The 17th row should be Benjamin Lariche and Jamie Caroline. The 18th row of the grid, Sebastian Bode and Michel Blanchimont. The 19th row, Lars Dahlmann and Cembalo Kbazi. And then the last car was meant to be that of Roy Meerhaus, but he, as you've seen off that graphic, has moved forward somewhat. So although the grid sheet has him at the very back, there's been a change there, and that was off the amended grid anyway, so that's moved him a little bit further forward because he did actually set a qualifying time yesterday. He's been put ahead of those that have dropped to the back because of penalties.
Penalties were a switch, dropping to a single driver after running with two yesterday. We saw Jim Bullock-Bozzi further back in the field. He's running as a solo here this weekend. That was not the plan coming in, but that was forced upon him yesterday, continuing today. I thought he was one of the stars, the winner in the AM class yesterday, mixing it up inside the overall top 5 for much of the race. Curious what he can do in that BMW from further back in the pack today.
Now, pick a winner out of all of this is going to be very, very hard, isn't it? Because with these track conditions such as they are, it's pretty much wide open now.
You would think so. However, when conditions get bad, Porsches come to the front. At least that's the conventional wisdom, right? So I've got an eye on that 22 car that should have been strong yesterday. It appeared to be strong in the early going before the electrical gremlins. Nikolai Müller-Madsen starting that Porsche in the 4th spot. That's the car I've got my eyes on.
If that holds together, if they got rid of the problems of yesterday, we ought to as well mention the Chevrolet, shouldn't we? The V8 Chevrolet Camaro struggled a little bit yesterday, but you were saying that's largely down to the fact that it's got a huge amount of grip and downforce, but that compromises the top speed.
It does. Because of balance and performance, you're trying to fit all these different cars with different performance windows into something comparable so they can compete on a relatively even playing field. This Camaro, you think of the American muscle car as this high horsepower car. It's actually had to be neutered a little bit because it is so good in the corners. If you give it the horsepower in addition, it proves to be a world beater. We saw that a lot in the States, and as a consequence, sectors 1 and 3 here in Spa, probably not the strongest place for the Camaro, but very, very good in the twisty, high downforce requiring corners.
Well, there the cars now making their way up towards the right-hander of Blanchimont. Normally, we'd say flat out through Blanchimont. In these conditions, they're going to be very, very careful on the first lap of the race, but the safety car will peel in. The race director, if he's happy with everybody's formation, will give the signal to get the race underway. And so now as they make the run up towards the bus stop, then you've got on the inside of the front row Tom Canning in that red, white and blue Aston Martin. You've got Charlie Fagg alongside, so the two British drivers set to go toe-to-toe here. The Aston Martin that's on pole struggled a little bit in yesterday's race. One to watch also, I suspect, up from the back of the grid is going to be Jamie Caroline, starting there on the 17th row, but he was in good form yesterday. The car didn't get out in qualifying because it was crashed in Q1, but Jamie will be one to watch. So up we come then, out of the chicane, heading towards the timing line. And race 2 of the weekend in the GT4 European Series gets underway, and a good start being made there. Look from further back on the grid as Greg Gilbert in the blue and white Audi goes one way. To the inside line dives Timothy Bure. The Mercedes gets the lead. Gilbert goes straight on up the escape road at La Source. Also out wide goes Timothy Bure. We've got the Dean McDonald McLaren running out of road, and out of all of that, it is going to be Charlie Fagg who survives. He found the grip, and you can see how wet it has become because there's a lot of spray being generated already.
Well, these drivers, by and large, we believe on slick tires. The rain came basically just before the formation lap. It has ceased since then, but plenty of moisture on the track. Look at them slipping and sliding through Eau Rouge up the hill to Radillon.
So Charlie Fagg leads the way. Timothy Bure second. Tom Canning third. In 4th place in the little Alpine is Vincent Beltoise. He's made a very good start, hasn't he? And drama already because a spin there compromises number 21 Greg Faisal's Audi coming up Radillon, and I suspect he won't be the last driver that we see in strife. And there Jim Clark getting it all wrong under braking for LECLERC. Just surviving the first few laps is not easy. That was Stéphane Lemray going straight on. Anything Jim Clark can do, I can do, and the Toyota should emerge. And that's another of the Astons that's been in strife as well. There are cars everywhere. Yeah, another one rejoined coming out of LECLERC. Whew, that's only what, taking us to turn 6.
Now, we'll be not even halfway through the first lap of this 1-hour race. These are treacherous conditions indeed. I know where we're situated, it looks like the rain has stopped. That might not be true elsewhere around this massive circuit. Look at them slipping wide, using some of that wet painted area we talked about as treacherous earlier. Drivers throughout this grid have their hands full with changing track conditions, wet on the asphalt, dry tires on the race cars.
Downhill they turn then, and this part of the circuit doesn't look quite as bad as he did over at Eau Rouge. There is still a bit of spray offline, but Charlie Fagg, the race leader, Timothy Bure going with him. Vincent Beltoise is third, Nikolai Müller-Madsen fourth, Jim Clark fifth, Dean McDonald is sixth, Greg Gilbert recovering in 7th place, and then 8th. We've got the next of the Mirage Aston Martins. And that, as they turn their way through, is also trying to be part of that leading gaggle as the field then now comes down towards the right of campus for the first time. And all of the drivers, yes, they're trying to get position on this first lap, but they're also trying to find out exactly where the grip levels might or might not be.
718 was Snelly behind the wheel at the moment. If I remember correctly, that was your Pro-Am winner yesterday. That's one of the Porsches I've got my eyes on. The Caymans ought to be pretty strong in these conditions. We've seen that so far from Mulder Madsen a little bit further up the grid, one of the silver class runners.
So heading towards the end of the opening lap, the one that's really dropped back on this first tour is Tom Canning, because he's fallen down the pack. So a cautious start, but not being able to translate that pole position into a race lead. He was up only by hundredths of a second in qualifying. Now, this section looks a lot drier than it did when they set off. So in the space of 2.5 minutes, the pit straight much, much faster. Over the line, Charlie FAGG leads with 1 lap in the book. Timothée Bure is 2 seconds behind him already. Nicolai Müller-Madsen is running 3rd. 4th is Vincent Beltoise. 5th is Jim Plas. 6th, Dean McDonald there. 7th is Greg Gilbert. 8th is Tom Canning. In 9th place, Antoine Leclerc. And 10th is Hugo Chevalier, under attack from Maxime Soulet and Max Busnelli and Stéphane Lemeray. And still they come pouring over the line, this monster grid.
I think when we saw the first run through LECLERC, we saw a number of cars that had to go straight and then rejoin. One of them, I think, was Tom Canning in the pole-sitting car, and I suspect that's where he lost a lot of the ground early on in this lap. Here we've got a nice battle for the second position. Timothée Bure, who was very aggressive into La Source at the start of this race, now very much on the defensive, trying to hold off Nicolai Müller-Madsen's Porsche.
And drama there, because Jody Vullo has got it wrong coming out of Radiant. That's going to be a safety car. And he's about to be a major obstacle, as those that think they can dive past at the last moment see the Mercedes. And no wonder Jody Vuller gets out and runs for it, because that is not where you want to park. But we're going to have to neutralise the race to get that out of the way. And there, just before we get to it, side by side for second, elbows out. Timothée Bure says to Nicolai Müller-Madsen, no, you don't. Forces him out wide. But the Porsche finds the grip on the outside line. Müller-Madsen goes through just as we go yellow. Safety car deployed.
Well, I'm sure the team communication was telling both drivers we expect a safety car any moment. That's why we saw the elbows out from Bure. We saw the urgency there from Müller-Madsen, and it appeared to my eyes that that move was made before we got the call for the safety car. So move Nicolai Müller-Madsen up into the second spot, and now with the safety car, everyone will slow down. We'll see everyone bunch back up once again, and Charlie FAGG will have to be on the defensive, as he was yesterday. There was a restart in the middle of his stint in race 1, and he handled it with aplomb.
He did indeed. Well, the sun's shining on the pit straight. It's not shining on Jody Vullo, sadly. So that Mercedes out of the race. He was 18th when it came over the line, and the squad that operates that car, you've got to bear in mind, has had a pretty checkered weekend, because they had to rebuild number 70. And now the Trivelato Racing by Viorba Corsa squad has got another badly damaged Mercedes to cope with as well. But we saw Jody Vullo out of the car, running away. That's the good news. That
is absolutely. You saw when he got onto the grass just how much that car continued to slide. Sometimes they actually speed up when you get onto the grass, because you lose all the friction that you get from the tarmac. So always a dangerous proposition in the rain, getting on to the grassy areas. Let's take a look at the start of this race here in just a moment. It was wild. No one knew what to expect as far as the conditions were concerned. Some a bit more aggressive than others, and Timothée Bure in particular, very aggressive here into La Source for the first time.
And look at Gilbert as well from the third row in the Audi. He got a bit of a squeeze, but he went the right way in a sense, because he had a line. But then as he got to La Source, all of that speed, he just couldn't slow the car down, and he sailed up the escape road. Also, you see Vincent Beltoise in the Alpine going with Gilbert. And yeah, Tom Canning being a little bit cautious. Bure realising that there's got to be another way through here, so he ducked to the inside line. Canning tried to cover that off, but he was oh so careful on the inside, really slow through the corner. So those that were braver on the outside line managed to mug him. And you see how many ran off the road there. Bure was one of them. Beltoise also in the background, Dean McDonald. And they're not the only drivers to have gone the wrong side of the curb. Stéphane Lemeray was another, and here all that spray being generated, so drivers coping with not only a wet road at that point, but also limited visibility as well.
Well, we talk about the importance of qualifying, and for situations like this, you can see exactly why it's so important to start up front. If you have the mixed conditions, if you have that spray, visibility is so crucial, and the guys starting in the first couple of rows had a major advantage as far as that's concerned. We've seen a couple shots of the run through La Source. This is that first treacherous climb up the hill through Radion. Amazing that it was as clean as it was. A little spin here for the 21, but able to recover.
I think he got a tap in all of that, did he not? So
I think so.
Greg Fairsley, I think, to be fair to him, had an assist. He was on the limit of traction. And then we lost also, of course, Jody Vullo with that moment a lap later climbing up the hill. So safety car is on track, and this is Jody Vullo all on his own, got it sideways, and as you say, onto that friction-free grass, bang, bang, and bang again, and then it bounced onto the road. And this was the scary bit, as they all had to try and find a way past the Mercedes on what was half the width of a racetrack now.
I thought that might have been a very scary moment there, and luckily everyone behind either got the radio call or they were able to see the stricken Mercedes there and get back single file and prevent anything more catastrophic from happening. Always a scary proposition when the car comes sliding back across the track in front of the majority of the field, as was the case there. And right at the end of a blind corner, it's worth noting.
I mean, the good thing was that it stopped where it did. It didn't go back any further and keep drifting across the pack of cars. Anyway, the safety car, as you see, is deployed. You can't overtake while the safety car is out. It's to keep the race going, albeit under controlled conditions. So Charlie Fagg ahead, Nicolai Moller-Madsen second, Timothy Bure third, and there, sixth, Dean MacDonald. Now that car had to start yesterday's race at the back of the grid because they never got a lap in, but it's having much a better run today. Behind Vincent Beltoise, you've got the Pro-Am leading Mercedes of Jim Pla. That was another car that was in the walls yesterday, retired with a mechanical woes.
It was, had to start further down in the order after a struggle in qualifying Q1, but Q2, Jim was very fast, and he was fast in his stint yesterday before the issues, so this is a car to keep an eye on, certainly here in the first stint, leading in Pro-Am, but the Pro-Am battle will really hinge on the Am half of that pairing. When the pit stop window opens, when the driver change occurs, which of the Am drivers can consolidate the gains made by their pros in the opening stint? That's what makes the second race of the weekend captivating.
So there is Jim Pla, and the Am class, incidentally, being led in 19th overall by Paul Tysgans, number 7, with his Aston Martin. So the Mercedes is being recovered, and the pro drivers here, the faster drivers in most cases, are unable for the moment to do what they need to do for their co-drivers, which is to go absolutely flat out and try and build a gap, help them to a good result in this race. Jamie Caroline, incidentally, 33rd, so he made a bit of progress before the hiatus came, before this interruption came, and down towards the chicane at the end of lap number 3 comes Charlie Fagg. Then he leads the pack.
How much rain running have we seen in GT4 European Series so far this year? This is round 8. We've had 7 so far. I know it was dry yesterday, but how about the 6 previous?
Just trying to think whether we had a wet race at Zandvoort. They had a practice session rained off because it was torrential weather. Wet races, I don't think we've had any from memory. That's the Am Cup car I was talking about a moment ago, Paul Tysgans. But yes, they've had rain-affected sessions, but I can't instantly think of a wet race. But you come to Spa, you're going to get them at some point, aren't you?
Yes. Well, we talked about it yesterday. We couldn't believe it. The clouds broke right before the start of the first race of the weekend. We had beautiful sunshine overhead, but that was always hovering over us. The prospect that rain was in the forecast for today. And again, the touring car race just before this one was heavily affected by the rain. We had the rain just as the formation lap began, and since then it appears to have been dry, at least in our little corner of Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. So, but you never know, and it looks like the cloud cover is not going anywhere anytime soon.
You've just been looking at Paul Tysgans in the Aston Martin, leading the Ams. Well, Cembolo Bazi, who was the Am winner yesterday, is second in class and not that far behind him. So the number 7, or as it says on the door, 007, Aston Martin, they're just coming up the brow at Radion. Is going to be under attack, I think, when we go racing, and that can't be far away because the circuit is now clear of car, at least. There's a bit of dirt on the road, and there the recovery vehicle parked off the circuit. That will go through one of the access gaps, and that should mean that we can go racing pretty soon. As I say, the Aston is numbered 007, as has become a good marketing thing for Aston Martins. But whisper is, if you read the Fleming novels, James Bond drove a Bentley rather than Aston Martin. But it's not spoil the party.
That's
19th is where the car is.
Yeah, don't let facts get in the way of a good story, right, David?
Not, absolutely
but Bullock Bazzi, we talked about him a little bit early on. He was the winner in Am yesterday. He started at the back because, if I'm remembering this right, he did not take part in Q2. He was supposed to be running as a tandem here this weekend, but for various reasons that was not possible. So had a great qualifying effort inside the top 10 overall yesterday and kept the car there, running inside the top 5 for a great deal of it. It really was not challenged as far as AM honors were concerned, but had to start way, way back in the 19th row today and has made great progress in a limited amount of green flag running to get to up to 21st overall and second in class.
Yeah, to an extent, because he's the quicker of the two, he's almost better on his own anyway.
Safety car will be in this lap. Safety car in this lap.
Safety car in this time, says the race director, Steve Burns, the British official, who is then off to be one of the team of stewards for the 24 hours a little bit later on. So as if this wasn't busy enough, you then follow that up by having to go through all the judicial aspects, which could be track limits, pit lane speeding, too many people working on a car, you name it, during 24 hours. So good luck with that. But we're going to go racing this time. And it's going to be interesting, isn't it, now to see what Nicolai Müller-Madsen can do on the restart against Charlie Fagg.
Well, that is the car that I mentioned at the top. I thought might have a chance to charge forward. So far, up a couple of positions to second after starting fourth. But the McLaren has been at the front of the field basically throughout all of the running thus far, going back to yesterday and today. As it dries out, I think that's going to favor the McLaren even further. We saw it excellent in a straight line yesterday. That's where it seemed to have its biggest advantage, but these conditions might be a bit of an equalizer and bring the Porsche, bring the Alpine, perhaps some of the other cars into the mix. I wonder if they might not be doing a little rain dance, hoping we might see some more precipitation before it's all said and done, because at least with Charlie Fagg behind the wheel yesterday, I don't know if anyone was going to touch this United Autosports McLaren.
Double winners at Monza. Can they be double winners at Spa down towards the chicane? Look, really good restart by Charlie Fagg because he's gapped Nicolai Müller-Madsen by at least 3 lengths as they get towards the braking zone. But now, of course, Charlie has got to remind himself what the grip level is like, because this will be the first time he's had a racing lap for a good few minutes. The road to the eye looks drier. Charlie Fagg sprints away then over the timing line. Nicolai Müller-Madsen is behind him and the gap's 9/10 of a second. Timothy Bure is third. And Vincent Beltoise in that very, very rapid Alpine runs fourth. Fifth is Jim Pla. Sixth is Dean McDonald and Greg Gilbert seventh. But the Audis have not sparkled this weekend. So Gilbert struggling at the moment to make up more ground.
Well, he lost some ground early on with that wide exit to La Source on the opening lap. He's been in recovery mode ever since. Beltoise was really putting the pressure on Bure there, and that continues. But further back in the top 10, this is a great scrap. The sister McLaren very much in the wars a little bit further back. It's a great day for Dean McDonald and company, not having to come from the very back of the grid. They managed a solid result yesterday, a lot less work out in front of them thanks to a much better qualifying effort, more representative in Q2 for today's race.
So there you've got the cars up towards LECLERC. Jim Pla having to defend against Greg Gilbert now, and those, remember, are the top 2 within Pro-Am, as Maxime Soulet there gets up the inside of Hugo Chevalier to try to consolidate 10th place. Chevalier run off the road a little bit. The 2 Mercedes, the green one from the Sellerslach Racing team, and that also now brings Max Busnelli into the mix in his Cayman as they head into Bruxelles. To the inside line there goes Chevalier. Couldn't find a way past Maxime Soulet. It's great to see Maxime Soulet in a GT4 race, but you can't help but wish that he was on the 24 hours grid and in a front-running GT3 car this weekend.
Yeah, the thoughts crossed my mind as well. We've had some changes to driver lineups due to some COVID issues throughout the build-up to the race, and that's a name you would have thought might have popped up to fill in on short notice, but great to see him in the GT4 car, change of position there on entry to Pouhon. That's Bure slipping back behind Beltoise, who's been the biggest mover so far. A little hairy there for Bure slipping out wide at the exit to Pouhon, but Beltoise now up 7 positions since the start of this race.
So now Dean McDonald getting himself onto the back of that group and looking to try to wriggle past. We could be on for a 1-2 for UA at this rate, because that McLaren is looking very rapid as the road dries. So yeah, Dean McDonald comes now down through the right-hander of Campus. He's on the back of the Mercedes, as you see, and now that Vincent Beltoise has gone through, the Alpine charges on in pursuit of the Porsche. But for Dean McDonald, the door is open and there's nothing that Bure can do to defend. That McLaren was coming by no matter what.
That looked surprisingly easy. Bure really had no recourse but to give way, and that puts McDonald up 1 more spot. It's been a great charge for them, much as we saw yesterday. And perhaps in talking about the rain being an equalizer for the other manufacturers relative to the McLaren, I was doing a disservice for the McLaren's capabilities in mixed conditions, although it does seem like we're drying out quite rapidly. Don't see any of that spray that was so prevalent at the start of the race.
Well, Charlie Fagg leads the pack. He's gone through and he's just done the fastest lap of the race. Proof that it's drying out. Nicolai Müller-Madsen is a 1.5 seconds, give or take, behind him. Beltoise goes third. Fourth now, Dean McDonald. it's not going to be a surprise if McDonald isn't posting quicker laps before much longer when the road is clear ahead of him, whereas it's not clear here because this gaggle of cars has got an awful lot of company around it. Over the timing line there goes the number 5 Audi, which is one of the Speed Lover team cars, Pierre Courroy. He's got Jacques Camathias in the mix as well in the Porsche on the outside line, and Camathias brakes as late as he dares in the Allied Racing entry, goes round the outside, plunges downhill. Behind all of them, you've got Akhil Rabindra in the other Mirage Aston Martin, and there Anthony Hodson comes up to try and keep his place, but Sebastian Bode in the blue-nosed Mercedes goes by, and at the back of all of that was Andrea Benazet in his Toyota, side by side here. This is for third. McDonald is on the attack against Beltoise, but he couldn't do it.
Beltoise has been the big mover in the Alpine, but it looks like he might have topped out the potential of that car in these conditions. He's not been able to make any inroads on the top 2, and now coming under attack for the final podium position in silver, as well as overall. There's not an overall running order, but just to give a point of reference, these are 3rd and 4th on the road, and McDonald would very much like to make this move as soon as possible because Müller-Madsen and FAGG up ahead are starting to pull away. That's
right. So Nicolai Müller-Madsen is slightly faster in the first sector this time around, but Dean McDonald right there on the back of Beltoise, and he's absolutely gobbling up the real estate. It is not taking him any time at all to get through the pack, to get through the traffic. And there he is, right on the back of the Alpine as they swoop through Pont. But look at that lead gap, and Charlie Fagg's McLaren squirming a little bit under braking. So one might lose a place, but the other United Autosports McLaren looks like it's about to gain a place.
He's putting the pressure on, is McDonald. Beltoise very stout in his defense at this point, but you bring up a great point here at the front of the field. Charlie Fagg was leading by 1.4 seconds the last time by. To my eye, that has come down quite a bit. There's no more than a car length or 2 between the top 2. Same story here through Kerpaul Frere.
We've also had a change for the AM lead. Cembolo Kbazi is up to 16th as they're right on the edges. The Alpine, but there's nothing it can do because look, that McLaren is just in a different league, and Beltoise effectively has to let him go, slot in behind. But Dean McDonald is on a mission, no question about it.
Well, some of that has to do with the straightaway speed of the McLaren as Beltoise tries to come back to the inside. Oh, this is actually the battle for the lead, excuse me. This is Müller-Madsen on the attack now. Charlie Fagg is going to have to try and do what his teammate Bailey Voisin did his entire first stint. That was wide on the exit for Madsen.
That's going to be a track limit look, isn't it, from race control? But interesting that the McDonald McLaren is charging. Charlie Fagg's car is losing pace. Müller-Madsen has done the fastest lap now, and he's right there on the tail. So after the car was retired from the race yesterday, Nicolai Müller-Madsen is absolutely determined to find a way by. He's a previous Silver Cup champion in the GT4 European Series when he drove an Audi, now part of the Porsche fabric for Allied Racing, and he and Joel Stern making a good combination as the road dries here through Eau Rouge. The Porsche is pushing harder, and Charlie Fagg's advantage has dwindled away. There is Dean McDonald. He's 5 seconds and a bit back from Müller-Madsen, but if the two leaders hold each other up by squabbling, he'll be with them shortly.
He would love to see these two engaged in a duel. Maybe not, because it is a team car up ahead, and he wouldn't want to see something necessarily to the detriment of a team car, but if it does put him in a position to gain a couple of spots and challenge for the win, I'm sure he would take it. Dropping back, I think we got a couple of Astons here doing battle, and a charging Audi just behind.
Yeah, that was Paul Teiskens in number 7, and I think he's lost out now to Konstantin Lachnauer. There is Hugo Chevalier, number 2. You've got Cembolo Kbazi's BMW in the middle of all of this as well, so Kbazi is about to go 11th. It's looking wetter up here again, but Kbazi goes by. That BMW is being driven very, very well indeed, up from the 19th row of the grid.
Amazing. So he was 12th at the line, give him 11th with that pass we saw a moment ago as far as the overall running order is concerned. Easily the leader once again in the AM Cup, but still pushing very, very hard despite the fact he has a nice cushion over Tyson's, who runs 2nd in AM but 18th overall.
So Maxime Soulet comes under attack. Cembolo Kbazi, the AM leader, is looking to the inside line of Pont. The door is open. Has he got the drive off the corner? Let's see, because for the moment Maxime Soulet is able to defend. Maxime, massively experienced driver, but there you can see Cembolo Kbazi tries the inside line into the piff-paff, brakes later. Is he going to commit to it? Yes, he is going to commit. Soulet on the outside line, but he has to give way. Kbazi goes through, and that puts him into the top 10 now.
Well, that's going to stick in Maxime's craw just a little bit, knowing he got passed by a car from the AM class, albeit with an asterisk here. You mentioned earlier, Kbazi very accomplished, really running in the AM class by default because he was left without a teammate last minute. So it does have a slight asterisk to that story. Here's a look at one of the Alpines. Beautiful looking car. Love to see these in person here for the very first time, as far as I'm concerned. And looking pretty good. We got Beltoise running up in 4th, and another one, I think this is Leclerc, correct, running in 9th overall and in podium contention as far as Pro-Am is concerned.
They're very pretty little cars, but Cembol Bazi is not admiring them. He's overtaking them. He's got past Leclerc coming into the chicane. So Cembol Bazi really is another of the stars of the weekend here. He's doing the 2 races solo. The leaders have gone by, and the gap has opened up a little bit now to 9/10 of a second. So Charlie Fagg trying to respond. But Cembol Bazi, don't forget, can run at this pace all day long because he doesn't have a co-driver. He's going to make a longer pit stop, so he will drop back within the pit window, but the pace of the car is good, and it will continue at that pace.
It's been very strong. Best BMW yesterday as far as the overall was concerned, and of course, again, the winner in AM. Here's Soule now, who's falling back a little bit, and Chevalier right behind is going to be threatening him for that position. That would be for 11th in the overall order, just off of the class podium.
So the leaders go through Leclerc. Their 3rd is Dean McDonald. In 4th place, Vincent Beltoise. That last lap by Cembol Bazi was a 2 minutes 43, which means that he's lapping on the same sort of pace as Mother Madsen at the moment.
Impressive.
So
and doing it in traffic.
Get further up the order, yeah.
Yeah, really impressive stuff, because he was making passes on that lap and still put in that kind of lap time. That M4 looking very, very strong. This is the Alpine of Leclerc that's dropped back to 10th after Bazi got by.
Bazi still charging, and he's just done the absolute best in the first sector of that lap up the climb to Leclerc.
I'm surprised Canning has not been heard from more. He's back at 8th, had the great starting position, of course, and was a factor in the race yesterday as Bazi is looking for another scalp, trying to find his way up yet another position.
So now he's looking to get past the Pro in the Pro-Am Audi. There is Tom Canning in the background, down now in 9th place. But yeah, Cembol Bazi doing a great job here, and also under the BOP, you can see how strong the BMW is. It's well suited to this circuit, isn't it?
It is. We've seen that to some extent in its GT3 version. Of course, that's the M6 model, at least for one more year, but that car has been rapid in a straight line. Over in the States, in probably GT4 America, we've seen the M4 very good in a straight line. I think the BOP very similar between the 2 championships. It varies by track type, but that has been one consistent aspect. So you would think a track like this could potentially benefit that BMW.
So there is Greg Gilbert hustling on. Now, Gilbert is no dummy. He is a very accomplished French GT racer, but there's nothing he can do in this race, nor indeed yesterday's, against the traffic ahead. He'll be absolutely flat out, make no mistake about it, but this is not a kind circuit to the Audis under the balance of performance. The race-leading McLaren, however, still strong and about to complete lap 8. The BMW of Cembol Bazi to the outside line as they head into the braking zone now for the chicane. Bazi goes wide in, then swings across the road, but is he going to be able to get the undercut coming out of the chicane? The answer there is no. So the Audi hangs on, lead gap 8/10, and Dean McDonald 3rd has just done the fastest lap of the race.
Gilbert very savvy in his defense through the chicane, but no recourse here. Bazi so fast as we see the first taker with the pit lane open. It didn't even look like he got a jump out of the hairpin, or the chicane rather, and still was able to make that great run into La Source and get the pass done in the braking zone.
And the first pit caller, Stéphane Lemeray, who had an off early on. The Supra, again, mysteriously, just hasn't really been as quick as anticipated this weekend. It was there or thereabouts yesterday, but never really hung on to the leading gaggle, whether it was with Lemeray or Antoine Potty at the wheel. Potty will take it over. Joel Camathias is in as well. Now, that's quirky, isn't it? You think that somebody that's done racing up to champ car level would be V-gun, would stay in it for as much of his stint as possible, and yet Camathias in early.
It is one that makes you scratch your head a little bit, but the team clearly has an understanding of what its drivers are capable of. They've got their strategy planned out. It's worth noting we're starting to see a little bit of sunshine here, so track conditions are changing, and maybe they want to do something as Bazi moves to the inside of Pla. He cannot be resisted. Cembol Bazi, so impressive. Young Turkish driver able to make up yet another spot, and from the 19th row on the grid against the pros in the Pro-Am classes, it's worth noting. He's been able to charge up just outside the top 5 overall.
You have to get up early in the morning to beat Jim Pla. Underrated driver, underfunded driver, but very, very quick. And yet Bazi has just breezed up to that Mercedes that has a wobble of Pouin past him. And look, pulled away already. What a gap. You can see that BMW is just gobbling up Spa. It is so well sorted. And just there, Gilbert onto the back of Pla now means that the Pro-Am leaders are nose to tail. Into the pit lane, we've got, amongst others, Rafael Villanueva, also in Pierre Courroy, and the number 4 Blanchimont Lariche Audi. So that means now that Robert Consigny and Thomas Ollier will be the drivers, and Greg Faisal there stays behind the wheel because he's a soloist.
One of the quirks of the pit window is that no longer, at least for a time in the States, perhaps that was true here, the leader had to get the first chance to come in, and they changed that rule in the U.S. Clearly, it's not that way here, as we see the Porsche of Muller-Madsen starting to apply pressure. And so sometimes with the twists of fate, you can have a car mid-pack that actually gets the first opportunity to come in, play the undercut, and it's really beneficial. That did happen. I'm not sure these cars would have made the early call anyway, but they did not get the first chance at it. Here's FAGG, very defensive. Muller-Madsen swings wide into a source, trying to get the good run out. Might have laid the bumper to the rear of that McLaren. He's putting on a show here, is Muller-Madsen, trying to get that pass done before his stint comes to an end.
So the gap at the flag, at the line, was 0.3 of a second. New fastest lap done by Ciampolo Balzi. Not a great surprise, really, now that he's got clear real estate ahead of him. Also, of course, these leaders are now about to encounter traffic. You can see cars coming out of the pit lane, including Alexander Hartwig's Porsche now, that Jacques Matthias has handed over, and Hartwig is going to get out of the way of the race leaders. He'll get his lap back when they pit, but look at the way that Dean McDonald is going. He is almost up with the leaders, but the last time we looked it was about 6 seconds. It's now 2.5, and he's just done the absolute best within the first sector. So Dean McDonald has been one of the standout drivers of this opening stint.
Took the words out of my mouth. Started inside the top 10, but a little bit further back. Still much better than they started yesterday, but has been steadily making his way forward and has been making some inroads on the top 2 in the last few laps, having the deficit. And that car should be in a position to challenge in the second half of this race after that pit stop is completed.
So race leaders plunge downhill. We're on lap 10. We're heading towards Pouhon. Vincent Beltoise has been in, incidentally, to give way to Loris Cabirou in number 30 Alpine. There's the lapped Alexander Hartwig. So for the moment, he's slightly in the way of Dean McDonald, but he's been very good so far, Hartwig, of getting out of the way of the traffic, and he will do so now as Muller-Madsen is right there on the back of Charlie FAGG. Dean McDonald goes through on the inside of Pith Path. Say it again, one of the stars of the opening stint has been Dean McDonald.
It looked to me like Charlie FAGG ran wide in the second left of the double gauche, the Pouhon corner there, and that let Muller-Madsen get right back into the picture. So, yeah, this McLaren, it's been fast, but maybe a bit inconsistent. We saw this yesterday, too. They'd build a lead, and it would go away, mostly in Voisin's opening stint, but to some degree later on, maybe that's Muller-Madsen playing the strategy, saving the tires a little bit to mount a challenge, and the challenge is certainly on here, David, into Blanchimont, right there in the slipstream. Can he make a move into the chicane?
It's now or never, you get the feeling, don't you? Because he's never had as good a chance. Charlie FAGG covers off the inside line. Nikolai Muller-Madsen to the outside. Look at McDonald reeling them in. And is anybody going to bail for the pits this time? Yes, Muller-Madsen gets out of the way, and instantly that brings McDonald onto the tail of Charlie FAGG. So still 32 McLaren, looking quicker than 23. Good stint by Muller-Madsen, though, to take the fight to the McLarens. Now, what can Joel Sturm do? Because he was a front runner yesterday. This is still a race that is up for grabs, but will McDonald be the leader by the time the McLarens pit? He's right there on the back of FAGG now.
It's very possible, and it's interesting to see the difference in performance between the two sister cars from the same team. And I'm going to put forward a theory that with a variable forecast ahead of this race, perhaps United elected to split their strategy to a degree and put more of a hybrid rain-dry setup on one car and favor more of a dry setup on the other. That way they're covered in any eventuality, and that could go away towards explaining the difference between the two, but it also could come down to the talent behind the wheel.
Absolutely right. So Dean McDonald on the back of Charlie FAGG, the two United Autosports McLarens, and there is a driving standards flag being prepared for Dean McDonald for not respecting track limits, which might have something else to do with why he's been catching up, because he's been using a little bit more of the road and therefore maintaining momentum a little bit more easily than Charlie FAGG. But that battle's going to rage on, I think, the other side of the stops when Gus Bowers will take on Bailey Voisin. So Muller-Madsen giving way to Joel Sturm. And out on track, there is 87. So Jim Pla has fallen a long way down the class all of a sudden. Greg Gilbert leading in Pro-Am from Antoine Leclerc and then Maxime Soulet. Jim Pla has fallen back, as you see. In fact, on this next lap, he has dropped back behind Hugo Chevalier and Ralph Kellner. So what's going on for Jim Pla? Has he got a problem or has he had an off?
It's very curious. He was running quite strong, maybe not with the pace to challenge for the win, but certainly in contention to run inside the top 5 overall. Look at this flock of cars all mixed up together. Right there in the very middle of it is one of the Astons, number 55.
Yeah, that's Tom Canning, isn't it? He's got traffic all around him. Canning dropping in this, but he's also got back markers to try and wriggle through as well, as Leclerc and Soule come up behind him. The back marker terrorised onto the curb. Leclerc up the inside, goes through. Yep, just about does it. There is Joel Sturm then, set to rejoin the race. Remember, a pit stop is 136 seconds, so it is a long, long stop.
And 146 if you're by yourself.
Right.
But
166 if you're changing tyres from slicks to wets or the other way round.
don't think we'll need to worry about that, at least as the conditions are right now, if they stay constant. And that's probably not a smart thing to say when you're at Spa, but should that be the case?
Is this a smart thing to do? Both of them in at the same time. They're going to double stack. So United Autosports, both McLarens in at the same time. And now we need to see where they rejoin relative to Joel Sturm in the number 22 Porsche Cayman.
That's a good question. Sturm will be aggressive, no doubt about it. We heard from Nikolai Moller-Madsen pre-race yesterday, and he really praised his teammates' aggression. And we're going to see some of that on display, I think. He knows exactly what he needs to do. Right now, it's all about putting down fast laps to hopefully come out in front of these McLarens when the pit stops cycle through. Looks like a pretty clean entry, all things considered, for the second-placed McLaren, the 32. So I don't think the double stack hurt them too much, but we'll see on exit if perhaps there could be a hold-up.
And this is Joel Sturm, who has got to treat this out lap like his one shot at qualifying, to go absolutely flat out, bearing in mind that when the car pitted, it was right on the back of number 23. So in theory, it should still be with the McLarens. The pit stop time that came from the 22 Porsche was 2 minutes 16.1, so that's going to be the gauge, if you like, as to who's going to win or lose on the pit stops, depending on what the time from these cars is. Charlie Kemp and Jody Hemmings overseeing everything for the United Autosports aspect. Of course, a very busy team these days in all sorts of races.
No question, all over the world. They are heavily involved. Sturm just came through Piff Paff and now making his way through Kurt Paul Frere to give you a point of reference relative to these McLarens. They leave in the same order in which they came in. You see them leaving the pit lane, but it's not really leaving the pit lane. That is leaving the new pits. But with this endurance pit lane, they have to go all the way around that corner, very tight there at La Source, even tighter than it is on the circuit itself. And then the long trundle down the old F1 pits, and before they can finally release that pit limiter and head up the hill. So that's really where we'll see who came out on top on strategy. This is the car we're keeping an eye on, the 22 of Joel Sturm, who's having to get up to speed in track conditions he has not seen yet. He's pushing as hard as can be, heavy into the brakes here into La Source.
Well, he's done the car's best middle sector. Loris Cabiru has just done the fastest lap of the race in the Alpine. Right, McLaren's in the pits, and here comes a Sturm warning, because Joel Sturm hustles down the hill, and over the white line the McLarens can accelerate, but Joel Sturm is going to get the lead of the race. Is he not in the Porsche? Yes, he is. Joel Sturm picks up the advantage, so the Allied Racing Cayman takes over the lead.
Beautiful strategy to come in early, get out of that fight. They knew they had the pace in that car. They were just being held up by, at the time, Charlie Fagg in what was then the race-leading car. So the strategy called, get that car in, get you some clean track, get out there, run fast laps, and that paid dividends.
Now bear in mind that the road is getting drier all the time, so those sectors of Sturm were quick because the road allows for it. His pit stop was 1/10 of a second faster, line to line, than number 23 of Charlie Fagg. But the reason he's been able to gain the time is because the road is so much drier, and he's been able to push much harder on that outlap. The number 32 McLaren, 2 minutes 17.3, so that's lost a second against 23 in the pits, even though it's the same team operating it, but only 1/10 the difference in the pits. But look at the gap on the track.
Right, and the amazing thing about what Sturm has done, I made mention to this earlier, is he's having to assess the grip levels in real time. He's heard from his teammate, I'm sure, what to expect, but you don't know until you get there. And you're trying to judge what kind of grip is going to be there when you arrive, with no real frame of reference, but also knowing these are the crucial laps. You have to push, push, push. And he was right on the ragged edge and got everything out of that car. The result, a commanding lead.
And it looks as though it's growing, doesn't it? Because right now, Joel Sturm is charging. He did a 43.7 in the first sector. We can't really compare that yet against the McLarens, because their first sector includes the pit stop. So it's only really a middle sector that we can gauge, and it's personal bests from FAGG and Gus Bowers, but it's an absolute best of the race for Joel Sturm, and he is very nearly 2 seconds quicker than both of the McLarens within that middle sector alone.
Unbelievable. He is on it, and that's the aggression that we talked about. Nikolai Moller-Madsen talked about him pre-race yesterday, really expected to see Joel come through the field. They thought they could have had more in qualifying for race 1. We saw glimpses of it before the electronic gremlins cost them a good result, but today, knock on wood, everything has been nice and clean for that car, no gremlins to speak of, and the car has been very, very fast in these conditions.
Joel Sturm, fastest lap of the race now, 2 minutes 32.815. Lap times are tumbling. The timing screen looks like a patchwork quilt. There are so many different greens and purples on it now as people go faster in their own cars or for the absolute race best. There is another car you can't rule out, Loris Cabarrus, and it does seem that as the road dries, the McLarens perhaps not quite so good. Their setup seems to have been for the damp or the greasy conditions, but track conditions may be now turning the tide against them.
I'm surprised by that because they were so strong in the dry yesterday, but you might be onto something where the team might have set up anticipating more wet conditions. Here is Voisin on the defensive, as he was much of the race during his stint yesterday. This time, though, trying to hold off Gus Bowers, his teammate, forcing him the long way around into LECLERC. Bowers has to bail out of it. That was very nearly contact between the two, and that opens the door for Cabarrus in the Alpine, making his way to the outside.
And he also nearly did it there, so they're about to drop down into the right-hander of Bruxelles, and there you can see Loris Cabarrus inching up onto the back of the McLaren. So there are certain parts of the circuit where the McLaren still do have the advantage, but Cabarrus, great opportunist yesterday to try and get up through the pack, and he's doing it again here. He's going to be way, way, way out wide there, coming through turn 9. That'll go ping somewhere in race control, and that'll be looked at as the notional race leader comes in. That's Ralph Kellener's massively experienced driver, Ralph, to give way to Christian Gysi. And Cabarrus has fallen back, hasn't he now, against the McLarens?
Wonder if some of that is just giving up the time that potentially would have been gained by running out that wide, just to say, yep, I understand, I did it. We do have black and white flags to cars 4, 15, and 36. That is not Cabarrus, so perhaps they just haven't taken a look at that yet. As long as you don't make a habit of it, you probably can get away. But here he comes back on the attack once again. This has given some respite to Voisin and Bowers, but it's not going to last long. The Alpine is coming with a nice head of steam. It is looking very, very strong.
So the car's now accelerating into the right, the left of Blanchimont. Ralph Kellener, as I say, has given up that notional race lead by pitting. More and more of them are being shown driving standards flags now, because as the road dries, they're pushing harder, they're taking more chances.
Well, you can use that part of the road that's painted. We talked about it earlier. The painted area in the wet is very dangerous, but slowly that's starting to dry. We're seeing drivers much more aggressive.
Pit stops, cars 77, 88, 126 and 718 under investigation, short pit stop.
So says the race director, Steve Burns. So are those cars that we need to fear about? Well, one of them is 88, is 6th on the road. In fact, Paul Everard, 5th next time over the line. So for being under the regulation pit stop time, you're allowed what's called a joker pit stop across the 2 races. You can use it once out of the 2 races, and that basically is a second tolerance. But if you're anything more than a second under, then the timing data is there from the beams at pit in and pit out. It gets referred to the stewards and they will have a look. So penalties could be coming. Another one of note, 718, of course, the Snelly Jacoma Porsche Cayman. Now, what about this for 2nd, 3rd and 4th?
2 cars to slipstream off of for Cabarrus in behind. Takes a look to the inside notionally, but not really the opportunity to go by. I think to some degree Bowers was helped by the slipstream. He's able to take off a voice, and there's another big lunge up the inside, and that sends the 32 around. Was there contact between the two? Gus Bowers goes for a spin.
I don't think there was contact. I think that was just Gus Bowers trying to get the power down a bit too early, and he ran out onto the damper part of the road. Let's see. It was certainly close. The Alpine to the inside. No, I don't think there was. Personally, I think that was just the McLaren offline and lost traction.
Offline and therefore in the wet.
Yeah.
Online, it is quite dry, but if the cars aren't running over that particular spot of asphalt, there's still a bit of moisture there on these slick tires, and that did seem to be the case where he got out a little bit wide, put the tire in the wet spot, and that sent him around.
So you apply the pressure, and eventually something will happen. So Loris Cabarrus gets up in a 3rd place. And Joel Sturm taking full advantage of all of these dramas behind him, because he is now well over 8 seconds to the good.
Now it's been dominant from him ever since he took over that car. The conditions suited him, great strategy from the team, and for the first time able to run unencumbered by cars ahead that have taken away some of the aerodynamic effects of these GT4 cars. And the consequence has been stellar lap times, and that's allowed him to build this gap. It's also helped that the cars behind him have been fighting amongst themselves, and that gives him that chance just to sail away to a sizable lead. But all of that could go away in the blink of an eye should there be an incident, as we've seen throughout the weekend.
And there's still something a bit rum, as you might say in the UK, about what's going on with that number 23 McLaren, because I think it must be down to the setup and how they have done it for the conditions. It does not seem to be as rapid as yesterday. The evidence of that is that Joel Sturm is away and gone. He's nearly in the next round of the championship. So far ahead is he? And you can see the way that Bailey Voisin is having to really fight for position now as Christian Gysi loses out. He gets forced out wide in number 9 Audi. The Chevrolet goes through. You've got Rapage chasing Eric Clement there up towards Blanchimont. So these cars now are, what, 13th and 14th?
Well, we talked about the strong aerodynamic aspects of this Camaro, so these are good conditions for the car where the straight line speed is less important. I think it's probably going away for them to some degree, but great to see that car running. Sadly, none of them in the US GT4 championship that I cover, and I quipped yesterday, it is quite funny.
Stewards' decision, 1 second stop-go penalty for cars 77, 88, 126 and 718 for short pit stop. 1 second stop-go penalty.
So that's Steve Burns passing on the news from race control, and at the top of the screen while that was all going on, you saw the rotating Audi. That's the Clement Zeiler Ruben Eohaus car that was at the back of the grid, and the big spin. It started off on one side of the road and ended up on the other, so Clement Zeiler in real strife there, Ryan.
Indeed so. Here's a challenge for position. Toyota trying to make a pass, and Zeiler right there in the way. And there might be something amiss with that car, the way he just pulled off. It does appear to have some suspension damage, doesn't it?
A bit crab-like that,
yes,
to my eye, as the cars come through. Was it contact that did it? It definitely was. That was Jean-Luc Daurier who got into the side of him. Bang! Around it went. So that's not going to do much good for your suspension, is it?
No, I think that explains a great deal of what we saw there. So very unfortunate. We've seen that a couple of times. There was one incident of that in the race yesterday that I believe brought out full course yellow and ultimately a safety car. So it's just a tough corner. Everything gets condensed when the speeds come down. It's a great place to try and make a pass. It certainly looks tempting, but it does end in tears every once in a while, and that was the case there.
So here you've got number 33, which is the Piotr Hodson Toyota, and he's coming under attack from a charging Michael Blanchimont in the highlighter pen Audi, through on the inside line, but is he going to go deep into the corner? No, Blanchimont survives that. So that moves him up 1 spot. 27th place overall now, because they've also jumped ahead of Clement Zeiler's troubled Audi on this lap. Here is the fight for second. I say fight advisedly, because actually now it does look as though Bailey Voisin has kind of got into his rhythm, and Cadbury has fallen away, and he's not clawing back that time.
Voisin with a personal best in the first sector. This is the number 88 car that we expect will have one of those penalties that we heard handed down a few moments ago. That's the car that was started by Timothée Beret and was running very much in contention, but that goes out the window here with this costly penalty. A spin as well for the 27 Aston.
So that, the Zandvoort winning car, Constantin Lachenau, remember it had its broken suspension issue yesterday. It was 20th, and that car falls down. Paul Everard, by the way, has just pitted 88 out of 4th place for that 1 second stop go. Now, 1 second doesn't sound a lot, but bearing in mind that the drive time through the pit lane is about a week, it soon mounts up, because it is the F1 pits here and it's the endurance pits the other side of La Source.
It's not the stop that kills you in this case, it's definitely the trip and the limited speed on that trip through a very long pit lane. I'm not sure there's any quite as long as that. This is your leader in AM, by the way. Bullard Bazzi still getting it done, despite the fact he had to sit stationary longer than the rest of his competitors in the class, and the charge back through the field resumes.
So he was 18th over the line, and he's now 15th at the bottom of the hill. I mean, he's absolutely flying. Really, really impressive the way that he has gone here, and were it not for the fact that you do cop extra time in the pits, there's almost an argument to say go solo in the future. But Chamberlain Bazzi, who was impressive last year in the remodeled GT4 calendar after the season had to be rejigged for obvious reasons, he has looked very, very good, and he's well clear now of the Wilfried Casabon, Andrea Benazet, Toyota that runs second in the AM class.
I do have to wonder what the rest of the AM class thought when the word came down that he was going to be effectively demoted or placed into the AM class instead of Pro-Am. I'm not sure this is exactly what they were bargaining for.
No, and of course he's taking points away from the regular scorers.
And it hurts him, presumably in the Pro-Am championship. No points paid there. So really, it's not great for anyone, except he might get some trophies at the end of the weekend, and I suppose those will look nice on a shelf somewhere.
This is very true. And it's also been good to watch, hasn't it?
Yes.
That car has been consistently quick all the way through. Now this is Fabien Michel, who in the blue and white Audi is the leading Pro-Am at the moment. But Ruben Del Sarte in the Aston Martin that started on pole position, that car coming good as the road dries. So I think maybe, again, talk about setup, whereas UA have got it right for the start of the race, and maybe Mirage with the Aston Martin hadn't. Pendulum swings the other way. In the background, though, look, is the recovering Gus Bowers after his spin up at LeClerc. And we've only got 12 minutes to go. Time has flown.
It has indeed. I'm surprised Tom Canning wasn't heard from more in his stint, but Del Sarte looking pretty strong. Looks like he has a potential to move up a spot, a little bit wide there. The stewards, I'm sure, will take a nice peek. Here's Michel on the defensive. A whole lot he can do, I don't think. Give that spot to the Aston Martin, up one position more overall for the number 55 car, put him up to 6th.
So that brings then Ruben Del Sarte up the order. 50 is now because of the stop-go penalty for Paul Everard, dropping him down the order as well. So things are getting better for number 55, but the trouble is he's 35, nearly 36 seconds off the leader. Joel Sturm leads by 12.5 seconds, and Fabien Michel wants that place back. He wants the class win, of course. The class opposition is the green Sellersbach Mercedes in the background as they go diving through Eau Rouge now.
Strong up the hill, it appears, from the Aston. That's able to create a bit of a gap. And here comes the 32 McLaren that we've been calling the recovering McLaren seemingly all weekend long. That was true yesterday. It really wasn't all that true today until the spin, but right back in that familiar role, coming from the back to the front. And they've proven to be adept at it. Not sure this is the way that they drew up their weekend, but it has been fun for us.
It illustrates racecraft as much as the pace of the car, doesn't it? So there you've got 32, which is Gus Bowers. That's the scene of his spin. And do I see wipers coming on again, as though it's getting a bit wet out there, because there both Del Sarte and Michel have the wipers on. It looks to have gone greyer at our side of the circuit. Is there a sting in the tail to this? The last 10 minutes approach, and it might be that it's going to get slippery once more out on track. Joel Sturm still leads by 12.5 seconds. Down the hill they come. We're on lap number 17 in this race, and yet the wipers are clearly on, certainly for Fabien Michel in the Audi.
Right behind this battle is Bosco in that green Mercedes, and he's a very interested spectator. Further back, a purple first sector for Chim Bullock-Bazzi, who continues to fly around Spa in his BMW. This is not a fight for a class position right here with the Audi and the McLaren, but it is crucial for Michel in the Audi to try and keep that buffer between himself and the hard-charging Bosco and the Pro-Am Mercedes just behind.
That's the one that was started by Maxime Soulet. So there is rain falling in the pits, and the circuit is starting to get wet, but it is also, in good old traditional Spa fashion, inconsistent in the weather and therefore the grip level. But right now Gus Bowers is going to make a move on Fabien Michel. 9.5 minutes are on the clock as the umbrellas go up, and way out wide goes Michel. That was at Blanchimont. You can put that down to the conditions perhaps, but equally it was way over the track limits, and spots of rain on the camera lens as well here. So all of a sudden the drivers thought they knew what the grip was like, but here, look at the shine on the road. It is very greasy indeed.
And out the window I can see some light rain. It's not as heavy as we saw at the very start of the race, but it is significant. The good news is, unlike the start, these tires are up to temperature. That should help. There's a bold move up the inside. Pass made. Give that spot to Bowers. Again, not for class position, but it now puts him in a position to try and run down Antoine Potty, assuming Michel cooperates, and I'm not sure he's going to.
Now, the Audi is good on this section of the circuit. We saw it a lap ago. He tries to make the best of that, but I think now the McLaren will get away. If it's drier up here, that'll play into Gus Bowers' hands as well, and it looks drier on this section.
Interesting. I'm not sure there's a track in the world that lives up to its reputation as consistently with its inconsistency as this one. really interesting. We're going to have a couple of class positions up for grabs here. We'll see if Bowers rather can charge forward and run down Antoine Potty in the Toyota just ahead. But now Michel is slowly falling into the clutches of Bosco right behind it. That is for the lead in the Pro-Am class with just 8 minutes and change to go.
Your only equivalent, I guess, in terms of the weather, just going back to your circuit point, is probably the Nürburgring, which is about an hour and a half away from where we are at Spa, but that is equally fickle. Luca Bosco then is getting much, much, much closer, isn't he, now to Fabien Michel? So with 8 minutes to go, Pro-Am is building up nicely, and Bosco's just about got enough time in which he can make a move here. Gus Bowers is getting away. Behind Bosco, you've got the Silver Cup Mercedes of Xavier Lloveras, which is in 9th place overall. But Luca Bosco, the way that he's going, suggests that he can have a real punt for a class win before the end.
Didn't make up much time in Sector 1, but Sector 2 appears to be a very different story. Here comes that Mercedes. Beautiful green livery on the 34 car. Really sharp-looking paint scheme for a Mercedes-AMG GT4. And he is slowly but surely running down the race leader in class. Pro-Am leader just up the road. The windshield wipers flashing. We're starting to see the headlights glaring once again as the cloud cover rolls in. We've seen a little bit of everything in the first 53 minutes of this one.
So as the leaders then wriggle their way down to the completion of lap 18, Joel Stern has just gone over the line. In fact, you're looking lower down at the BMW. Chamberlain Barzi still blasting on, and the Borissan Automotive entry closing onto the tail now of the Yacht Repange Chevrolet. Number 5 Audi also starting to pick up its pace a little bit, as you see that also wriggle through the traffic. Number 4 goes through as well, Robert Consani in the sister speed car entry. Number 2 Mercedes falling away now, that's Jean-Ludovic Foubert in the car that was started by Hugo Chevalier. But as the race leaders go on to lap number 19, Repange tries to go around the outside there of Eric Clement, who serves his stop-go penalty now. He bails for the pits, but look at Monaco Balzi, he's about to give the Chevrolet a tough time.
I think so, right there behind the rear wing. Chevrolet going defensive down the pit straight, little bit covering the inside. Here comes Bullock Bazzi late on the brakes, shoves that car up the inside into La Source. The grip is there, slides wide, and look at that, opens the door for the number 4 Audi. Contact with a hip check on the exit of the corner.
Consani, Robert Consani was the driver of the Audi, and Yacht Repange the one that came off worse. So Bullock Bazzi stays where he was, up 2 places Consani, down 2 places Yacht Repange, and right there with them as well now Alexander Hartvig looking the Cayman, the Porsche good up the hill. Remember the pace of the leading car, so it's no surprise really to see Hartvig going so well. And Bullock Bazzi has got to do this all over again as he makes the run up the hill. We know he's got the pace, but can he find a way by?
I think he can. He's done it before. He lost that spot back just a few moments ago in that coming together in La Source. You can see the damage. Definitely the Chevy came away with the worst of that contact and dropped a couple spots, lost some momentum, and immediately comes under pressure once again.
Yeah, Enzo Julier in the number 74 Mercedes is the man doing the pressuring. We've also got the Ralph Kellen as Christian Gysi number 9 Audi that briefly led on the pit stops, being investigated for doing that pit stop the wrong side of the window. So after the window had closed, it was in the pits, it came in and did its stop. But that car is falling a long way down anyway now, so we'll worry about that post-race as we have got 5 minutes to go. This is the Pro-Am lead battle, and it's suddenly come alive. Fabien Michel in the Audi has got Luca Bosco, who's up the curb right there behind him. Bosco has got the pace, and he's got just enough time in which he can make a move for class honours.
And that gap was 5-6 seconds not so long ago, and Bosco has tracked down the Audi at this point now. Where can he find a way past? He's stalking, that's for sure. Probably the next best passing zone as the Audi twitches ever so slightly will be into the chicane coming up in just a few quarters time. Can he stick behind the rear wing of the Audi through Blanchimont?
There's the Mercedes then as they sprint now with another driving standards flag being shown on the light board there. Out of Blanchimont down to the chicane. 4 minutes to go. Race leader's going to get 2, maybe 3 more laps out of it as now Bosco goes to the outside line. That's brave. He's going to run out of road surely. Yes, he does. Has to back out of it. And the danger here is that the number 15 Lloveras Mercedes splits them and denies Bosco a chance to challenge. Look, that mistake made. Look how much time it's cost him.
Oh, that's absolutely gutting for Bosco. It looked like that might be his chance to take the lead in class. Instead, he ends up in a fight that is not for class position. All that's doing is holding him up.
Yeah.
And that allows a little bit of relief for Michel up the road in the Audi. This is music to his ears.
He can't afford to let Lloveras go, but he can't afford to defend from him. So he really is now between a rock and a hard place. Down they come towards the Eau Rouge sequence up Radion. All Bosco can do is go flat out and try and catch up, as now Cabirou has caught Voisin. This is for second place. It was quite a big gap when we last looked, but now look, the Alpine tries the outside line at Bruxelles. This is game on for second place.
Cabirou getting stronger as the run continues. Voisin, though, has plenty of experience defending around this track. Hadn't run here until yesterday, but looked, as far as the race is concerned, but looked very, very good in his first stint, leading much of race 1 of the weekend, but was in defense for basically his entire stint. So he knows where he needs to position that car based off of yesterday's experience to try and hold on to the spot.
So down they come towards Bruxelles. And the gaps come right down because, again, you're now at a part of the circuit where the Mercedes is good. It's had the grunt in a straight line. Further back here, Ruben Del Sarte versus Gus Bowers. And then you can see behind 7th, 8th, 9th as one. And they're going to have time for at least one more lap, possibly two. So Luca Bosco still attacking, but he needs to make this move and try and clear the Audi, doesn't he?
He needs to do it as well before Joveris behind him loses patience. He's shown to be quite aggressive in his attempts to make his way past these two, and Bosco can't afford to be separated from the class leader again with just 2 minutes left. He's done a great job to run him back down. I wonder if there might be any intra-Mercedes teamwork, given the fact that really Joveris is unlikely to run down the next car in his class, which is Bowers up the road in the McLaren. So does it make sense just to help a fellow Mercedes runner try and win his class, or do they even care about that at this stage?
Well, same brand, different teams, different classes, different points on offer. And there is a car with a problem. That's the other Mirage Aston Martin, is it not? No, it's the AGS car, forgive me. Hugo Conde at the wheel of it. That's parked heading up the Kemmel Straight. This is for second place, nose to tail. Voisin versus Cabirou. And the race leader, I reckon, is on his last lap now. So Joel Sturm has less than a lap time left in the race. The lap is 2.5 minutes. We've got 90 seconds to go. And here is your Pro-Am fight, about to start the last lap then. So yellow flag in the first sector with that parked car. Over the timing line they come, and Michal is still just there ahead of Bosco. But they're now in the sector of the circuit that is really Mercedes friendly.
Joveris seems to be a bit more patient now, seems content to run behind. This, though, there's no contentedness here. We've seen yesterday the McLaren struggles. It'll allow the competition to get close, but has the oomph out of a corner to try and hold the spot. It led to an aggressive move into this corner yesterday as an attempt to make the pass. What can Cabirou do? Tries to go the long way around into Bruxelles, but very stout in the defense. Voisin able to hold on for the moment.
Down the hill they will run. Cabirou is trying every which way, isn't he? Goes one side, goes the other side. He's going to tighten the line coming out of turn 9. Gets a face full of McLaren then, as right there ahead of him is Bailey Voisin. Good defence by Voisin. Cabirou to the outside line, approaching Double Gauche. Down towards Pouan they go. He's got to try and squeeze up the inside, and he can't do it because the line is claimed by the McLaren. Last lap, and half of it remains. Up the curb they come on exit of Pouan. Joel Sturm leading by 16 seconds, and there Cabirou is right on the back of the McLaren now into the pit path.
Trying to find a spot by. It's going to be an unconventional lunge to the inside. He's able to draw alongside on the flank of the McLaren. Side by side. Oh, contact between the two.
And Bailey Voisin hangs on to it, but he's in strife for the next corner. He's got a punctured tyre. The tyre has gone down in the contact. So Cabirou goes through, and Bailey Voisin has got to try and drag that McLaren home. He's on his last lap, but big, big drama. There is 718 Porsche. Look for the race leader, though, because this is the 718 Cayman of Joel Sturm that he's going to win for the first time this year. But where will Bailey Voisin drop to? Checkered flag at the ready for the first time in 2021. Nikolai Müller-Madsen and Joel Sturm win for Allied Racing in the GT4 European Series. But then the drama continues behind. It won't be a double win for Voisin and FAGG. Will they even get to the end as that tyre chews itself after that contact? It's still going. Last lap means you don't have to worry too much, but it's all going hopelessly wrong coming into the braking zone for the bus stop because the tyre is completely shredded. Bailey Voisin has brought it home pretty quickly. Now he's off the racetrack. He's trying to pick his way back on. You can see the damage that has been done, but come on, Bailey Voisin, get it home. He is going to be third, just about. Antoine Potty, it's going to be a drag to the line. Is it going to be the McLaren or the Toyota? It is the Toyota that comes through for third place then. Antoine Potty credited with third position. And look at Pro-Am, they're together as well, up towards the line. It's the Audi way out wide. That's not going to go down well in race control, but Fabien Michel hangs on then to take the Pro-Am win. Bailey Voisin fourth then. That could have been a whole lot worse.
Unbelievable. We packed a lot into a short amount of time, that final lap. There is your AM winner. Bullock Bozzi continues his strong run of form here, ultimately just outside of the top 10 overall, but handily the winner in the AM class.
Wow, that contact could have been completely different, but as it turned out, it was enough to rub the tyre, and instantly down it went. And you saw the way that Bailey Voisin had a big slide. He controlled it well, and he brought the car back at a reasonably good pace, didn't he? As now, the Audis are still at play, with Michel Blanchimont getting up on the inside and making contact with Thomas Odier into the chicane. Odier will hang on. There might be a few things to unravel in race control post-race here, though.
No question about that. I wonder, we saw Voisin with the lockup going into the chicane on that last lap. Sometimes when you've got the tire carcass flopping around like that, it can sever a brake line and cause some braking issues, and it looked like maybe that was part of the problem for him. Really remarkable that he limped around about a third of a lap in this place, only lost one spot after the puncture.
Absolutely, shows the pace the car had early on and how, even though it wasn't the quickest car, it had built up the gap. But Joel Sturm did a great job, didn't he? That outlap as the road dried just totally played into their hands. Here's the replay. Look, Cabirou slides a little bit. Voisin is forced out, gets back onto the road. Nothing intentional from either, just a rub, but that's enough. Bang, down goes the tyre.
Yeah, it looked like maybe the contact with one of the sharp carbon fiber edges, one of the downforce elements on the Alpine, and that's easy. It's very capable of slicing through a Pirelli tire, and a great piece of driving to make that save. He entered the corner there with a pretty high rate of speed and only 3 inflated tires, and somehow held on to it, and again limped it home.
A career in drifting back in,
right.
I think, for Bailey Voisin. It's a great save.
It was.
In the end, that car 4th and Gus Bauer 6th in the sister car. So they both had stripe. There's bits of the McLaren and bits of the tyre carcass heading up through Blanchimont.
Unbelievable. They'll be picking that up for the rest of the weekend, I think. Sturm, you mentioned his lap, that outlap, as we do have an investigation underway of the contact between the 30 and the 20 cars. That's the contact we saw the replay of a moment ago. That outlap from Sturm was magic, and that made every difference in the outcome of the race.
Absolutely right. Nikolai Müller-Madsen teed him up well, pitted at just the right time as well, didn't he? So it is a race win for Joel Sturm and Nikolai Müller-Madsen, and subject to confirmation, second will be Laurie Cabirou and Vincent Beltoise. Third on the line, Antoine Potty and Stéphane Lemeret. Fourth going to Bailey Voisin and Charlie Fagg, ahead of the Tom Canning, Ruben Del Sart pole-sitting Aston Martin. Sixth to Gus Bowers and Dean McDonald, ahead of Fabien Michel and Greg Gilbert, 7th, who hung on to win in Pro-Am from Luca Bosco and Maxime Soulet. 9th, Xavier Lloveras and Luc Ivanieff, and 10th, Robert Consonny and Benjamin Lariche, in another of those cars that started a long way back on the grid. That was on the 12th row, so it was a good charge up through the field. Enzo Juliet, 13th with Sebastian Bode, ahead of the Camaro, 14th of Yacht Reponge and Timon Nabors. And Chambol Bazi, we've been getting excited about in the BMW. Another great race from him. And GT4 European Series delivers the goods once again. And it is a very happy Joel Sturm, a delighted Allied Racing crew. Nikolai Müller-Madsen, who's had a bit of a fallow period of race wins, but it's great to have him back winning races again.
Well, I think it's especially meaningful given the frustration from yesterday. It's worth rehashing if you're just joining us that this car looked strong yesterday, started up front, but then had an electronic issue, we believe, and it caused the car to stop even before the pit stop window even started. So Nikolai Müller-Madsen didn't get to run it all yesterday, was very strong in his first stint here today, turned it over to Joel Sturm and exercising some demons, I think it's safe to say, with a very clean run and a rapid run as well to the checkered flag.
Well, that was quite some race. Lots happening all the way through, and Joel Sturm and Nikolai Müller-Madsen, the winners. Time we heard from them with Gemma Scott.
No. I'm going to drive with you.
Nikolai, Joel, a fantastic result for you and a tough drive. You really pushed it in your stint, Nikolai.
Yeah, it was pretty difficult out there with the tricky conditions, with the slick tires. I tried to keep calm in the start because literally everybody thought that it was like dry. So they went off a little bit everywhere, got up to P2, could not really get past the McLaren. Decided to do a little bit earlier pit stop to do undercut. And the team did a perfect pit stop, 1/10 over, and Joel did an amazing outlap. And as I said yesterday, when you're sharing the car with Joel and he's in front, you can feel quite calm. So it was actually only the last lap we got a bit nervous because we just wanted to finish it. But before that, you felt quite secure and quite safe with Joel as a teammate. So
absolutely, the pit stop certainly paid off. And Joel, you pulled out an incredible gap in your stint there.
Yeah, it was just incredible to drive there. It was just the perfect car. It was I don't know really what to say. Fucking finally a win, and I'm just so extremely happy now.
Congratulations. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
So Joel Sturm and Nikolai Moller-Madsen, the race winners, and it was a lively race. Let's have another look at exactly what happened, because as the race got underway, great getaway by the Mercedes of Timothée Bure to the inside line. Charlie FAGG was the driver that in the McLaren lost places going into turn one, but then made them up as others fell off the racetrack, basically coping with the wet conditions and the road at its wettest at the very start of the race, but not wet consistently all the way around. So the drivers on the opening couple of laps having to try and work out what the grip level was like and where they could push, where they had to be a little bit more careful. And Nikolai Moller-Madsen's experience coming into play, whereas Jody Vullo lost control of his Mercedes and was in the wall, damaging the front and the back as it bounced and as it rotated, and he was lucky that didn't come further across the road. As it was, it gave people enough of a scare. The safety car deployed to get that out of the way. It meant that the field all slotted in behind him when we went racing again. So Charlie FAGG was able to build the advantage a little over Nikolai Moller-Madsen, but it wasn't long before the Porsche started to be the quicker car and chip away as sliding deep into Pouhon went 88 Timothée Bure, giving up a place to Vincent Beltoise. Beltoise in turn got the Alpine all sideways and was caught and passed by Dean McDonald, who was charging along in the sister United Autosports McLaren. Chambolet Bazi in the BMW battling his way through the traffic on target to get the lead of the AM class, and as eventually we had Nikolai Moller-Madsen getting onto the tail of the leading McLaren. The two UA cars pitted. They pitted after the Porsche though, and it was all to do with a demon outlap from Joel Sturm. But even though the pit stop was only a tenth quicker, he was able to gain ground through the sectors on a drier road and come out ahead. So the McLarens fell for second and third, and then we had this spin for Gus Bowers trying to hang on to his third place. A rather lazy slide up onto the curb, and that spat the car around. Chambolet Bazi making the attack on the inside of the Yacht Repons-driven Chevrolet, but as he ran wide, so up the inside came Robert Constantin. There was a little bit of nudging between them, and we had a spin for the Piotr Hodgson Toyota Supra up at Bruxelles that dropped that down the AM class. But the real drama was on the last lap here. Contact between Bailey Voisin and Loris Cabirou. It shredded the tyre on the McLaren. Voisin was really fortunate to drag that home in fourth place as the checkered flag fluttered for the race-winning Porsche of Joel Sturm and Nikolai Moller-Madsen. First victory of the 2021 season, and a really impressive drive by both. A really well-judged, well-executed, well-deserved win. Whereas with bodywork and bits of rubber flailing, Bailey Voisin somehow wrestled the car home, and that finished in fourth place. So to the podium we go, the drivers being rounded up, and as soon as possible we'll have the winners out ready for the overall podium at least, which will be the same as the silver podium. So out they will come, Nikolai Moller-Madsen and Joel Sturm taking the race win. But for the silvers, for third place, Antoine Potti and Stéphane Lemeray. Antoine, who was busy in French GT duties here a week ago, and he suffered a puncture on the last lap of one of his races, so something about the place that can still bite right at the very end.
I think this is somewhat of an unexpected podium, frankly, for the Supra team. The car was good, maybe not great, always seemed to be about fourth. And the misfortune for the McLaren opened up the door at the very last moment to sneak through and get on the podium.
Second there, you see Loris Cabirou and Vincent Beltoise, and the winners with the Belgian anthem and the flags there are Joel Sturm and Nikolai Moller-Madsen. So well done to our race winners, Joel Sturm, Nikolai Moller-Madsen for Allied Racing, represented on the podium as well. If you're thinking, how does the German team get the Belgian flag and anthem? It is because, as a mark of respect for all that the country has suffered in the recent appalling weather and the floods, for most races this weekend, all the flags have been Belgian. The Belgian anthem has been played, and the championships showing their support to the Belgian population. So now the Pro-Am drivers are made ready, and out to come Alexander Hartwig and Joel Camathias. Then for second in class, Maxime Soulet and Luca Bosco will step forward. There they are. So they tried their hardest, but they couldn't quite defeat the Audi of Fabien Michal and Greg Gilbert, who will make their way onto the top step of the podium. It was a great battle that we had right to the very end in Pro-Am, and the Santaloc team takes race honours in Pro-Am. Greg Gilbert and Fabien Michel, the class winners.
And Michel did a great job holding on to that spot. Bosco was charging. He erased a pretty massive deficit to get into contention to challenge, but the one ill-fated lunge that cost him a great deal of track position never could quite make up for that, could he?
No, you're right. It was a real frustration, but he tried hard, and in the end, it is a great battle that we enjoyed within the Pro-Am category. So now we're going to have the Am Cup as well. The drivers being brought forward. Christophe Amont and Michael Blanchimont come forward to collect their trophies. Wilfried Casabon and Andrea Benazet for second with their Toyota Supra. But one of the stars of the weekend is the winning Am, and that is Chen Bolot-Balzi. Great drive by him.
Opened up a lot of eyes, I think, this weekend, driving by himself and showing his pace, able to overcome the fact he had to sit stationary in the pits for an additional 10 seconds in each of the races and still was able to get great results.
So great racing here at Spa from the GT4 European Series, and there is more to come before season's end. Thanks for your company this weekend from Ryan Marine and David Anderson from a largely dry Spa. It's goodbye for now.